What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my review of the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. Now this device is unlike anything I've ever covered here on the channel before, and in fact, this is my first time ever using a Huawei smartphone. Now there's certainly a lot of things about this phone that I've found to be very interesting and unique, and I'm looking forward to sharing all of that with you here in this video. Now this is the international version of the Huawei Pura 80 Pro, so it is running EMUI 15. Now if you do buy this phone in China, it does run a completely different operating system called Harmony OS, and I'd imagine that with that software, the experience will be a bit different compared to what we're getting here. In addition to that, you're probably well aware, but Huawei devices do not have Google Play, so we do have the Huawei App Gallery. Now I'll be real with you, I really wasn't able to test this phone in the same ways that I've been able to test other phones here on the channel, and this device is on loan from Huawei, and it will be heading back soon. And as you probably know, I am located in the United States, and there's just a lot of limitations here with the software and operating system where you really can't practically use this as your day-to-day smartphone. But nonetheless, I did have the opportunity to get my hands on this device, and I figured it'd still make for an interesting video. Another thing to mention as well is that some of the specifications are slightly different in China compared to the international model of the device. For example, in China, they're getting a larger 5700 milliamp hour battery compared to this device, which has a 5170 milliamp hour battery, which is still really big. And then also charging in China is 100 watts versus the international model, which has 66 watt fast charging. Now, despite not having Google Play, the Huawei App Gallery has grown quite a bit as time has gone on, so you likely will find a lot of the apps that you do like, but at the same time, you're not getting any Google apps, which I consider a very big deal, especially if you're located in the United States. But that doesn't mean there's not American software on here. For example, the keyboard is a Microsoft SwiftKey keyboard, so it's actually a pretty decent keyboard, and I think that was a good decision by Huawei. So this software, even though it's way different from any other version of Android I've used previously, is actually very well optimized, and they did make a lot of good decisions here to really provide a good experience. And the operating system is just buttery smooth on this device. All functionalities of it are just very well refined. Even changing your wallpaper on here is actually a really cool experience. It has this really awesome animation as part of it, and since Huawei had to significantly customize their take on Android, all of these various Huawei apps are actually very well designed and packed full of features. Now, another signature aspect of this phone is definitely the massive camera module that we're getting on the device, and a little bit later on in the video I'll talk more about the cameras, but before we get too far into things, let me show you what all comes included in the box. Now, unlike many other phones that I've covered here in the channel lately, this box is actually pretty large. There's quite a bit of stuff in here. You can see too that they advertise front and center the App Gallery, so of course that's where you will be getting your apps. But in the box, we are getting a SIM removal tool. We're getting this 100 watt Huawei supercharged power adapter, and that's definitely a very unique design with the ports there. But in the box, you are getting a standard double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. And in addition to that, we are getting this clear plastic case, so that does provide some protection for the device. Now with the Huawei Pura 80 Pro, this phone is actually relatively thick at 8.3 millimeters, but I think that's actually okay. This phone's actually pretty heavy as well, just because it's supposed to be a flagship beast of a phone. So I even noticed when I was taking various photos with this device, it really does feel heavier than the typical smartphone that I'm used to holding. So they really didn't try to make this phone super thin or super light or anything like that. Instead, they just wanted to pack it full of features and also pack it full of excellent cameras. I also really love this color as well. It's called Glazed Red, and it just looks really unique, especially compared to other smartphones that I've covered before. Now, since it is a glossy back, it does pick up some fingerprints, but that is a compromise that comes with glossy back phones. Now, with this device, we're getting a very large 6.8-inch display. This display is LTPO AMOLED, we are getting a 120Hz refresh rate, and this display features a resolution of 1276 by 2848. So we're getting a PPI of 459, so everything's very crisp and clear here. We're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a narrow but tall form factor. And then finally, we're getting an 89.7% screen to body ratio. So we are getting curved glass on the display. However, it's not extremely curved. If anything, this makes the phone very comfortable to hold. And yeah, bezels are very small all throughout. Up top there is a hole punch of the front facing camera, and that front camera is 13 megapixels. But in general, this phone does have a pretty unique design to it. Of course, it's nothing too wild or too unusual, but at the same time, it is just very ergonomic, very comfortable to hold. Despite it being a heavy device, it does feel good in the hand. I know that's kind of a generic way to describe a smartphone, but it does seem like they did try to make this phone extra comfortable considering that it is a very heavy device. And then with this specific version of the device, we're getting 512 gigabytes of storage, but no microSD card expansion. So that totally makes sense. Most flagships nowadays do not have SD card expansion, and 512 gigabytes is quite a bit. I do believe though that this phone does start at 256 gigabytes. And then getting to the main attraction of this phone, it definitely has to be the cameras. So as you can see, we're getting this massive camera bump on the back of the device. We're just getting some very big camera sensors here, and it's not all for show. It actually provides really good results. So we're getting a 50 megapixel main camera, a 48 megapixel 4x telephoto camera, and we're getting a 40 megapixel ultra wide camera. And these cameras truly do deliver. It's some of the most impressive photography I've ever seen from a smartphone, and you'll see in a second some samples from the device. But here's how things look on the camera app. This is the main rear camera right now. Then from there, we can go to the ultra wide camera, and as you can see, we can fit a lot more content into a single frame here. There's also the 4x telephoto. That's excellent. I actually found this telephoto camera to come in handy more than really any other telephoto I've ever used, because you can use it in just a lot of different situations where it really gives your photos a different look. You're really not compromising also on much quality with the telephoto, so definitely whenever you think you need to use it, even for close-up images, like really getting close on something, then it really is the way to go. And then with this device, we're getting 4K video recording with the front and rear cameras. There's a pro mode, so we're getting a bunch of different options here. Under the More tab, there's other modes such as super macro, there's a high resolution mode, panorama, pretty much everything you'd expect to find. And then of course there's portrait mode, so you get those nice blurred out backgrounds. You can also take portrait selfies as well. There's me right there. And this phone really is just full of a bunch of different camera features. But let's now take a look at some photo samples from the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. Just want to add a quick note here. I'm in the process of editing this video that you're watching right now, and something really strange popped up. So for my photo and video tests, I enabled the watermark like I would do on any smartphone that I'm testing. And for some reason, the watermark says a whole different name for a different phone. So you'll see on the watermark, it says Huawei Mate X5, and I have no idea why that is. I literally took these photos and videos with the Pura 80 Pro, I promise you that. I've never even owned a Huawei Mate X5, so that's definitely a first for me. I've never enabled the watermark on a smartphone and had the name of a totally different smartphone end up on the watermark. I could go out right now and take brand new test photos and videos, but that's not necessary. These images are from this phone, I promise you, but I just wanted to clarify that right now. But seriously, I'm very impressed with the camera quality from this device. Literally every photo I took just ended up looking great. It does a great job handling colors, and it produces some of the most vibrant colors that I've ever seen from a smartphone camera. Even taking macro photos looked really good too, despite this phone not having a dedicated macro camera. So typically, if you're using a macro mode and there's not a macro camera, it just doesn't even look that great, but I was able to take great looking macro images as well. But every photo I took just looks like it's from a magazine or it was taken with a very expensive camera. So if you're a traveler, if you're someone who just loves photography, then this phone will definitely come in handy for that because, again, I've just found it to be very above and beyond what I even expected. And then like I said, with that telephoto camera, you're gonna be getting some great looking images as well, just some of the best I've gotten from a telephoto. But let's now take a look at some video samples from the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. What's going on, everyone? This is a 4K front-facing test video from the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. Definitely curious to know what you think of both the video and audio quality. Now there are some options here. I can switch to a wider field of view. So I just did that right now. And there's also an option to switch to 2x. And now I've switched over to 2x. So nice that those different options are available here while taking a single video clip. Definitely really cool to see. And now I'm back to 1x for the front-facing video. And this is a 4K test video using the main rear camera on the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. And it is a little bit later in the day, so the sun is getting close to setting. So because of that, there's definitely some intense shadows over here. And we have great autofocus in video mode. Now I just switched to the 4x optical zoom, Now that's really awesome that you can do this switch while taking a single video clip, so you don't have to stop the video, switch cameras, and then start up a new video. You can literally switch while taking a video. And then here's the 10x zoom, so this is a partial digital zoom. And I can zoom in further. Keep in mind this is a digital zoom as well, all the way to 20x. So it's pretty shaky. But we're back to 4x. And then back to the main camera at 1x. And then now switch over to the ultra-wide camera. So obviously with ultra-wide, you can fit a lot more into a single video clip or a single frame of your clip. It's always nice to have a great ultra-wide camera on your smartphone. And back to the main camera right now. Now with this device, we're getting 12 gigabytes of RAM, along with Huawei's in-house Kirin 1920 5G processor. So it's definitely unusual to use a processor that's not from MediaTek or Qualcomm, or from Apple for that matter, when it comes to flagship smartphones. But I definitely found this phone to run very smoothly. Everything just worked very well. It performs like a flagship, so there's really no surprises when it comes to that. And then like I said, with this device, this is the international version of the phone. We're getting a very large 5,170 milliamp hour internal battery. And it's definitely a very large battery, and it makes sense because this is a very large and heavy phone. So clearly they had a lot of space here for the battery. Now with this device, we're getting stereo audio out of both the main speaker and earpiece. We're also getting NFC. We're getting IP65 dust and water resistance. And then along with that, this phone is drop resistant up to 1.5 meters. And then taking a closer look at the hardware of the phone, like I mentioned, we're getting very small bezels up front here. And then on the sides of the phone, it is metal, of course. Up top, we've got a speaker, microphone. Then on the bottom of the phone, we have the SIM card slot, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and then the main speaker there on the bottom. On the left side of the phone, there's nothing. Then on the right side, we have volume up, volume down, and the power button. And then on the back of the phone, we've got the Huawei logo, we've got the camera module along with the flash, and that's pretty much it. So in conclusion, the Huawei Pura 80 Pro is certainly a very impressive flagship smartphone from the company. I definitely enjoyed playing around with this device and really getting an idea of what Huawei is offering nowadays. And I've got to say, they've put a lot of time and effort into making a very high quality and fantastic smartphone. Now, unfortunately, without that Google Play support, this phone probably doesn't make sense for most people out there. But if you're a techie like myself, then you probably still find this phone to be very interesting. And definitely, if you wanted to get a phone just for taking photos and videos, then this phone might be worth it just for that purpose on its own. But again, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. But this is the Huawei Pura 80 Pro. This is Kevin here, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.